Welcome to the next episode of Supporting Leaders. We have a really special guest with us today, Dr. Charles Thomas Jr. His background and bio is, pretty amazing. I'm just going to read a small part of it, but really, truly, you need to check out his website at charlesthomasjr.com because there's far more about his bio that is fascinating and interesting, and you'll see more about some of the books he's written. But with that said, Dr. Charles Thomas Jr. Is a community leader, educator. He is also an Amazon #1 best-selling author, multi-award-winning social entrepreneur, multifaceted philanthropist, and he is currently the CEO of Clear Cloud, which is a flourishing cloud engineering company that offers specialized cloud services to intelligence community customers. He is committed to service and philanthropic efforts and has varied experiences in public, private, and nonprofit sectors. He meets people where they are, endeavors to fully understand them, and approaches community challenges through creative storytelling, education, leadership development, and interpersonal connections. Dr. Thomas earned his Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, Master of Business Administration, and doctoral degrees with distinction. He's from Flint, Michigan, and lives in Northern Virginia with his wife and children. And again, to go check out his website, charlesthomasjr.com. CT, thanks for being here this morning with us.
Yeah, appreciate you. Appreciate you having me. I'm super excited to talk to you about leadership stuff and what you're doing is pretty cool with the Supporting Leaders podcast and capturing all of the collective wisdom of humanity to share with others. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, let's dive in. CT, for those who don't know, you and I through the same doctoral program at Creighton. And so I think we figured out the other day we've known each other now close to a decade, but it's enjoyable to watch your journey. And from an outsider looking in, there's been certainly a lot of times where it seems like, holy cow, CT is crazy busy. You do so many things. You've taught in the jails, you've taught in colleges, are running a business, you have a family, you work out like crazy. I know that you have that achiever part of your Gallup Strength Finder. But I feel like right now, like the evolution is like a little bit different for you. So tell me about that, your journey with the achiever and doing things and where you're at now.
Yeah, I think early in my career it was very foundational, right? Build the skills necessary so that the house you built is being built on bricks, that it can't be blown over easily, right? So a lot of the stuff was very internally focused for me. Go get this degree, go get this certification, learn, 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 learn. And from the outsider's perspective, it may have seemed like a lot was going on, but in reality, I was leveraging the same skill set, right? It was in multiple worlds, but it was the same exact skill set for me. So it's not like I was doing something that was so cognitively different than what I knew to be true that it was causing me any heartache. But now I think there is I like to, I don't really like to put myself in boxes, but if I had to put myself in one, I like to describe myself as like a creative obsessive, right? They are, as an achiever, like I'm a habitual mountain climber, right? As I'm climbing one mountain, I'm already looking to the next mountain. And historically that has been okay to, as I'm climbing one mountain, to constantly look at the next mountain, because everything I was doing was just internally focused, right? And I'm talking even pre-kids, before now we have, three great healthy children. So I'm talking pre-kids, and even when they were little, as I'm building that foundation, I was still very internally focused to make sure I could be okay, so then I could help people be okay. So with that, the mountains I was climbing, if I fell off those mountains, I was the only one that was going to get hurt, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you ever watch the movie Free Solo?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen that movie?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like this dude climbing, the world's tallest mountain without a rope, right? So before, the mountains I was climbing, in my mind, they were big, but now as you look at the stuff that I'm doing now, they're not as big in comparison, right? So even back then, if I fell off one of those mountains, it was okay because I would only hurt myself. Now the differences are, as you have a company and you have people that work there, and they look at you to make sure they get paid and they can have insurance and all these type of things. The mountain is higher, so if I fall off, a bunch of people fall off too, right? So that that obsessive focus has to be there, and there needs to be a certain level of mastery. So I think, as you get better at your particular craft, you have to hone in on that thing and say, hey, I might not be good at a bunch of other stuff over here, but I'm certainly good at this thing, right? So as a creative obsessive, I like to make sure that I can stay focused and watch and move and scale these mega mountains without a rope, right? And have people with me and lift as you climb, right? You lift as you climb because I'm not climbing this mountain by myself, right? So I think my energy now is different in the sense of, you have people with you. You have people with you in the sense of like people are with you in general, but you know what I mean? As leading a company, there is an element of, hey, if you do not have permission to mess this up, right? We don't, right? If the people on our leadership team, we do not have the permission to mess this up. We have to stay focused. We have to be masters of our craft, and we have to help other people become craftsmen and craftswomen. So it's extremely important to focus. And it's the same way when I write a book, when I'm climbing that mountain, it's lock and load for however long it takes, right? You completely let go of the external distractions, and you just you're like an assassin that's locked in on this target, and you don't stop until the mission is accomplished. So that's where the focus comes in. And I think it's kind of like this when you go throughout your life is teacher, student, teacher, student, teacher, student. And you have to make sure you know where you are in that journey, and then you pivot accordingly and you respond accordingly, right? That's where I am right now.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of, so my dad I interviewed for the first episode, and he talked about when he first started his leadership journey, he was like the player, like he had to learn he had to teach himself and he had to learn. And then at a
Mhm.
certain point, then he felt like now I can coach and grow other people. And some of what you're saying kind of reminds me of that. And I'm curious too, um, as you're leading other people, is that a whole lot more pressure for you? Like, is that stressful, or is that good stress for you?
So no, I don't think there's the only pressure you feel is the pressure you put on yourself, right? So for me, I think it's not pressure. It's an enlightened, enhanced sense of being, I think, right? It's not fear, right? You have to go through and you lock in and say, all right, we have this opportunity to do something of significance, which significance to me is remarkably different than success, right? So I think we have an opportunity to do something of significance. So there is an element of the challenges are different, right? The time to make a difference has never been greater in my mind. That's academically, that's economically, that's social, that's professionally, that's personally. Everything that we have going on right now, if you live in that moment, the time to make a difference has never been greater. And I don't take that type of stuff lightly. People at our company have entrusted me to lead and to lead well. I constantly tell people it is imperative that we be leaders worthy of following, right?
Mm.
Even though it may seem like you're a singleton, you're not. Dr. Maya Angelou is quoted as saying, "I come as one, but I come as one, but I stand with 10,000." Right? And I think we stand on the shoulders of giants. So for me, it's not an element of any additional pressure. It's the
Yeah.
component of I stand on the shoulders of the best of those that came before me. So it's important that I am able to think well, lead well, speak well, take on the challenges that come my way. When the arrows hit, I can catch them, and if they still hit me, I can break them. Right there's a battle tested, much more battle tested now than I was in years past, and I have a shoulder full of stripes to prove it. Right, so there is so no, I don't think it's not stress, not to me. It is an enhanced sense of understanding of where I am in time and space, right? What these opportunities look like, what the challenges look like, how can I play a role for as long as I have the opportunity to play a role? What does that look like? So no, it's more fun to me than anything. It's not stress. There are some things I don't like about it, right? Like some of the administrivia that I hate doing, but even that's part of the journey. So it's a beautiful existence to me, and it's not scary. It's not I'm not fear based. I'm not nervous. It's just I've practiced this for years. Practiced it for years. Now I'm just having an opportunity to get into the game to play. So this isn't new to me. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I know for certain that I have put in the effort to do the best that I can while I have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, the other thing too that I wonder, I feel like I picked up on it a little bit, but it sounds like you're locked in on your purpose. Like, you know the purpose so well that some of what may stress other people out, it isn't a stressor for you.
I don't know if I know. I think I know the purpose, but I certainly can see I certainly have the vision to go where I want to go. Right. So I mean, maybe they're synonymous, maybe they're not. But what the reason I'm not afraid, I think, is because I'm moving in this thing by faith, right? Like I'm not every time, like I can only see so far, but it's like when you drive a car, right? If you're driving in fog, you turn the headlights on, you can only see so far, but you know that those lights, as you keep driving, is going to keep illuminating more of the path, right? And that's where I am, right? I can only see so far, but I'm like, it's cool. When I get to that point, I know that my headlights are going to illuminate the path for me to go a little farther, right? Down the road. So, and then when I get to that point, if I don't know what to do, I just make the next best decision, right? It's a very simple construct to me, right? If I don't know what to do, I will certainly make the next best decision. So as long as I keep walking in the right direction and keep making the next best decisions, we'll be okay. So right, that's why there isn't this pressure, this stress, this overwhelming sense of almost paralysis that can stop you from doing what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I want to hear more
So
about
that's
this,
my
like moving in faith, because like, is that based on faith in your own abilities and faith in knowing that you've been battle tested and you know your own abilities, or is moving in faith something bigger than that?
much bigger than that. Right, it's much bigger than that. To me, it's knowing that God has me covered. As long as I do my part, God will do the rest. Right? When you think about the Jesuit education and they talk about, heroic leadership, Chris Lowney, one of the books that we've read, the Jesuits teach us to boldly go, right? Refuse no man or woman of talent or quality, right? So for me, there's a component of you do your part and God will do the rest, right? Like I'm not smart enough to figure out, I can't outthink failure, right? So all I can do is walk in the direction and legitimately know that when I get to the top of one set of stairs, the next set of stairs will pop up. And the light that illuminates that path of climbing this spiral staircase will keep illuminating as we move forward. So no, while I do have, belief in my skills. We've talked about self-efficacy before and all the, org behavior books and that type of deal. Right. Well, I do have the confidence in myself to be able to get things done, right? Because I am battle tested. I do have the shoulder stripes, right? I'm comfortable there, right? But I mean, you can't win a game by yourself, period. It just doesn't happen, right? Without the right people with you, without a right team of folks behind you, without a lot of people pushing you and challenging you, you can't win. So it is a faith in something, in my case, God, that is much bigger than me. What I describe him as the grand architect of the universe. So the universe conspires to help you, right? And I'm very comfortable with that, right? I think as you start walking down the path, the universe sends these watchers. Some people describe them as angels. These watchers that'll come and say, "Hey, he hit a couple obstacles, or she hit a couple obstacles, but they carried on, right? Because we all know every obstacle yields to resolve and supreme tenacity. As long as you don't quit, you will get through that obstacle, right? Your mind will quit way before your body does. So as
Yeah.
long as you just keep going, as long as you keep going, you can get to the finish line, right? And so for me, it's important to continue to play the game because I'm more curious as to what happens if I don't quit,
Hmm.
right? I'm more curious what happens if I don't quit, right? It's like that meme where the dude is hacking away underground trying to get to the diamonds and he stops right at the end. But if he had kept hacking for 10 more seconds, it would have been $1 billion worth of diamonds. You know that meme?
Yeah.
Right? So you never know where you are in the process. So that's why I'm more curious to see what happens if you don't quit. And it's not about the outcome will be there, but it's about the system that gets you there. Right? I'll use a basketball analogy. If I shoot a shot and it goes in off the backboard and I didn't mean for that to happen, yeah, I mean you score 2 points, but it was an accident, right? So we focus at our company, and even when I'm doing things at the individual level, I focus on the system. Did I do the things correctly to reach the desired outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
If so, all good, right? And if not, you'd be like, okay, well, the outcome wasn't what I wanted, but the system was there. So we just have to get a little bit better at honing in on that system, right?
Yeah.
So if I can focus on the day to day and focus on the system, the outcome will be there. So you talk about mountains, right? I don't look at the mountain right now as Everest because it's my version of Everest at this point in my life. I'm not climbing Everest. I'm climbing one step at a time. And if I keep hitting these things with even without a rope, if I keep going and going and going and going and going, at some point you reach the apex. At some point you reach the apex, right? You think about it's analogous to going and finishing our doctoral degrees. You don't start off like, oh, I'm gonna go and get this degree. You're like, I'm gonna take this class, then I'm gonna write this paper, then I'm gonna finish that class. Write these set of papers, finish this class. Write these set of papers, finish that class. Next thing you know, you finish however many credits necessary to achieve this degree, right? And you've summited that particular mountain. So I approach all of my activities the same way.
Yeah, there's so many different places that I could come up with a million different questions that I want to ask you about some of what you just said. But I want to go back to like you talking about the obstacles, just all these obstacles, and just knowing your background, that you grew up in Flint, Michigan. There's so many obstacles that you've overcome that, thinking about too, like going to Notre Dame and becoming a walk-on, and like so many things that you've just continued to accomplish. And as you were talking about faith and as you were talking about overcoming obstacles, like, do you feel like that's just like instilled in you from such a really young age, like that mindset and how to just tackle these obstacles? Or was that something that you had to learn from failure and adjust, or is it something completely different?
I think that was learned at home, right? I modeled my parents. I modeled my parents' behavior. I mean, my mom and dad's work ethic is second to none, right? I mean, yeah. So to answer your question directly, I learned that by watching my parents lead by example. So they would push and push and push, and when things would pop up, they would be cool. Like there may be these moments of frustration, but then it's like, okay, calm down, settle in. You still know the target. You've released that arrow, right? You've shot this thing, boom. Now you just have to keep walking behind it because at some point it's going to hit the target, right? You have to know that. Now you may have to meander, right, as you're going through to get the stuff done, but no, there's an element of tackling obstacles which is fun, right? Because once you achieve those obstacles, you're like, I can do it. I can do it. When I ran my first Spartan race, I thought I died 37 times doing that race. My body was just crushed, right? But then after you did it the first time, you're like, okay, I can do this again. All right, then again, then
Yeah.
again, then again, then the first time you ride 50 miles on a bike, you're like, man, I'm about to pass out. Then you do it again. Then it's 60 miles, 70 miles, 80 miles, 90 miles, 100 miles, right? Then you start to build the endurance for this type of stuff. And not only do you build the endurance for conquering obstacles, you build the appetite for it. You look for them because they're fun, because it's, like I think it's the Robert Frost poem of The Road Less Traveled, right? I took the road less traveled and it made all the difference, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes going that extra mile is so important because you're literally the only one there. You're literally the only one there. Like, 'cause I watch this stuff when you do a 13 and a half mile, 35 obstacle course. When you get to the end, it's only a few people that are left standing. So many people quit along the way, be it because they don't have the mental fortitude, the physical fortitude, right? They get hurt. Something happens where everyone doesn't finish those races, right? So again, your mind will tell you to quit. So 90% of this stuff is mental. If you can push through the mental challenges of like, man, this is too hard, your body will certainly adapt. That's if you're doing a physical activity or if you're doing something mental. If you can break through that, and it's probably this much, right? This area here is where a lot of people quit. If you can hop over that, then your everything starts to realign. You're like, okay, I'm cool. I can continue to move forward, right? So for me, there's an element of you play until you can no longer play anymore. Like we all have an expiration date, right? For me, whenever that happens, nobody will ever be able to say he didn't put in effort, right? And I think that's because I'm no more smarter than anybody else, right? But like I've shared this with you before, what I lack in intellect, natural intellect, I make up for in work ethic, right?
Hmm.
I'm gonna put in the effort. If it may take you 1 hour to understand the concept. It may take me five, but at hour five, we're both at the same level. right? But the difference is I was able to push through those challenges where somebody else who is just smart may give up easier, right? I don't care about being smart. I want to be discerning, wise, knowledgeable, understanding, thoughtful, focused, that type of deal. And so, no, I learned that from my parents in the sense of once you set the goal, continue on until you decide to do something else, right? So life is pretty simple to me, to be perfectly honest. We have a lot of challenges, but life in and of itself isn't hard to me.
Right, like we overcomplicate it a lot. And part of what you were talking about too, like that little bit more, and I like how you said earlier about like just staying curious. That was in my weekly email to my staff, I included Cy Wakeman's quote where she said, just stay curious 1 second longer. That like digging in that diamond mine, if you
Right.
just 1 second longer. And it reminds me of that like one
Hmm.
1%. And I don't know if you've read The Slight Edge, but it reminds me of that
Oh
1%.
yeah. Oh yeah. Like Jeff Olson.
Yeah. Great book. So
Yeah.
speaking of
Yeah. Yeah.
which, tell me
Absolutely.
about what kind of habits have you developed over the years to help hone in on your leadership skills? So I know you're an avid reader. So talk about that. And are there any other habits that you've developed that help push you forward?
Habits. No, it's a lifestyle for me, right? So I don't know, for the last, I guess it's 12, 15 years, I read anywhere from 50 to 70 books a year, right? So because the world is your library, right? And I mean, you don't have to be an avid reader. Like every day you walk outside, literally the world is your library, right? You can watch people and see how they're doing. Sometimes I'll literally go and, I mean, not in pre-COVID days, I would literally just go sit in the mall and I would just watch people. I would watch their interactions with each other. I would watch who was walking upright with a sense of purpose and confidence. I would watch who was dejected and be like, damn, like what's going on in their life right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Watch how they're interacting with kids and all that type of stuff. Just because I think it's important to be a student of human nature, right? Not for anything else. I never talk to these people, not in the mall setting, but in summer times, like I'll go to neighborhoods with multi-million-dollar homes. I'll be like, if I'm leaving work, I'll be dressed in a suit or something. I'll just get out my car and knock on doors because I'm curious. What do you do in your life to own a house this big, right?
Yeah.
And what's remarkable is 90% of the people will actually talk to you. Once they realize you're not selling them anything and you don't want anything, they'll actually talk to you. I'll get out of the car, I'm dressed accordingly, and I'll be like, look, I'm not selling anything. I'm curious, how do you have a 13,000 square foot house?
Yeah.
Most of the time, the rich and famous, they'll laugh. They'll laugh and be like, oh man, it's no big deal. I'm like, bro, you have a Maserati here, you have a Bentley, you have a Lexus, and you have like gargoyles. This is the real story. You have gargoyles sitting in the front of your house,
Right.
right? So the guy starts laughing. He talks to me for an hour. I'm like, all right, cool, man. High five, appreciate it. Never saw him again, right? But what he did for me was be just that shining light of this is possible, right? You see it on Instagram and all that type of stuff, right? But you don't know how real that is. But when you see it in real life and you talk to the human who's scaled that level of a mountain, there's a level of inspiration there that I think is cool for me, right? So the habits are reading, talking to people, and I used to be in a mindset of win or lose, right? Because I'm highly competitive,
Mm-hmm.
like almost to a fault. Well, I'm only competitive at the things that I think I'm good at. I'm not just overall competitive.
Right.
I'm not an idiot. Right, but I'm very competitive at the things that I like to do and that I think I'm good at. But I've moved beyond simply being competitive and wins and losses to now, do you accept the challenge? Are you willing to accept the challenge of whatever that thing is? And the answer for me now is yeah, if it makes sense to me, like if it aligns to what my goals are. And the reason we go back to focus, I was doing a bunch of stuff because I was trying to figure out what the goals were,
Mm.
right? I was trying to figure out like, okay, what am I good at? How can I be? And so some of the things while I was using the same skill set didn't ultimately align to the bigger goal. Everything I do now aligns to the bigger goal,
Yeah.
right? And if it doesn't, I don't do it, right? Like I've gotten better, even though I don't like saying no, like I've gotten better at being like, hey, sorry, I can't, I'm not saying no forever, but I can't do it right now. I'll get back to you once I knock a few of these things out. But now it's a matter of, are you willing to accept the challenge, right? Whenever I write the next book, it's not about wins and losses. I've written a couple best-selling books. Do I care if the next one is a bestseller? Not really, right? It's an element of I'm going to do the best I can. I will certainly leave a piece of me on those pages. If it happens to be a bestseller, cool. If it doesn't, I'll still be able to look myself in the mirror and say, I did the best that I could possibly do during this particular activity. And that's enough for me, right? I don't have to prove to people I'm smart, right? Let the phones be smart. I don't have to be that, right? Like I said, I want to be a person of significance and value to people that we meet, right? Like these conversations. You shouldn't walk away from this conversation feeling worse after having talked to me. And if you do, that means I did something wrong. And I think about that in real life. Nobody who talks to me ever should walk away from any interaction with me feeling worse than they did when they started talking to me, period, right? And if I feel like a person may feel that way, I'll back away from the conversation. Like if somebody pisses me off, I'll bow out of a conversation like, yo, we need to reconnect on this later, right? Because I know my trigger points. I very much know my trigger points. And if somebody pushes that button, I'm like, let me bow out. Let me bow out. I'm not the greatest at it, but I'm getting better at it. You know what I mean? And I think that type of stuff is important to know who you are on the journey to get things done. So yeah, the habits to me, like I said, are reading and being a student of the human condition.
Yeah, I love how you talked about too, just, earlier how you were developing up some skills and it's allowed you now to be in a place, or you were kind of exploring some different things and you're now in a place where everything's able to hone in and you're laser like focused. And as I'm hearing you talk and I'm thinking about some of the other people that have been on the show, there's definitely some themes that emerge from, successful leaders. And I know, in one of your books too, you talk to a lot of leaders doing a lot of really great things. What themes have you seen or identified kind of through that process, or just observing that successful leaders seem to have in common?
Yes, that's been a very cool part of my writing journey and the leadership journey. I think the themes that really pop out to me are they're willing to be in the arena by themselves, right? They're willing to stand on an island by themselves and do things that other people might not necessarily be willing to do, right? Because leading and making decisions is not always popular, right? Sometimes, you see a whole bunch of people going one direction and you have to be like, nope, I'm going that way, right? And sometimes you have to stand alone. And then not only like the very strong ones, they'll stand by themselves and they don't feel the need to have to justify why they made that decision. Somebody asks you to go to the movie theater, no is a complete sentence. I don't have to say no comma. I can say no period, right? Now, social decorum dictates that you offer some form of like, nah, I can't go because of whatever reason.
Yeah.
But most of the time, because whatever is a bunch of nonsense. Like, no, I don't want to go because I would rather take a nap, right? There's this element of people try to be their representatives and try to be all things to all people, and it's not true. Like one of my best friends, I call him my brother. He's always said to me like, you're hyper competitive, you're hyper ambitious, you're hyper focused, you're hyper achiever. And I used to try to downplay that type of stuff. Right? Like, you're so very intense. And I used to try to downplay it. And it's like, once you embrace it, you're like, yeah, I am. And so what?
Yeah.
And so what? Right? I am a creative obsessive. And I am to me, are the two most powerful words in succession in the English language. I am whatever, right? When you say I am, I think you have to be very cautious of what you say post I am, right? So when you say I am this or I am that, the world says, oh, that's what Lisa is. At the very least, that's what Lisa thinks she is, right? So we will now conspire to make her that, right? And if that thing post I am is destructive, you've pulled that into your world, right? Yeah. At least that's my metaphysical orientation. It's my thinking on that, right? So if I am a creative obsessive, I am a father, I am a husband, I am a leader, I speak in terms of what I want versus what I don't want, right? And as you go through that journey, I think it's important to figure out, when you think about the leadership themes, number one, they're willing to stand alone. And I won't say number one because these aren't in any priority order. They're willing to stand alone. They think, right? they think they have some form, and then they're almost obsessive with some form of personal development, be that physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever, right? And I think there's an element to the very good ones, right? And when I say leaders, these aren't famous people. They don't have to run mega conglomerations, right? I'm talking about it could be a person. They don't even have to own companies. They don't have to do any of that, right? They have integrity, honesty, decency, and courage, right? Those are the things that you see for people who end up doing well in life, whatever well is, right? Because I think oftentimes we inadvertently confirm or inadvertently think that success equals monetary acquisition, and it doesn't, right? Success isn't necessarily monetary acquisition. It can be, depending on what you are. Success could also mean you are walking down the street and you didn't fall into a pothole, right? Depends on what you want to do, right? Depends on what you want to do. So I think so leaders to me have those habits of they're willing to stand alone. They're locked in on personal development. They just want to get better, right? They want to lead. They want to offer something of value to somebody other than themselves. They don't look at things in terms of success. They look at it in terms of significance. What did I do here to offer value to somebody other than me, right? Right? Because if it's always me, nothing really matters, right? And I think if you get to the point of significance over success, it makes it easier. And I have a bunch of themes, as I think, but those are the ones that, as I'm talking extemporaneously and thinking through this stuff as we talk about it, those are the ones that pop to me first, like quick, based on my interactions with other people.
Yeah, that's so insightful. And, this whole conversation has been so inspiring, as it always is with you. But in the little bit of time that we have left, I just wanted to open it up to you. Is there anything else with regards to leadership that, would be great advice to share with people who are either, currently in their leadership journey or thinking about becoming a leader that you think that they would benefit from hearing?
So I'm not good at advice necessarily, but I can share, my thoughts on things. Plus, I don't really like advice because these people are like, well, you said I should do. Like, yo, bro, I just gave you some options, right? You do what you want.
Yeah.
Right. But I think for leaders, aspiring leaders, those who are trying to play the game, I think it's three things, right? You talk about Shakespeare, right? We'll go number one. And I think it was in the play Hamlet. Polonius said it: "To thine own self be true." Right? I think it was Act One, Stage 3 to be exact. Polonius is talking, and he was like, "To thine own self be true." And I think that is very, very important. So I'm gonna give these three thoughts on this. So, to thine own self be true, because if you are your representative constantly, you'll be tired. You can't be something that you're not for an extended period of time. Most of us, when we meet somebody, we offer a representative. Like, you would have never, 5 years ago, you would have never seen me do an interview in a sweatshirt and a cap.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened, right? It wouldn't have happened, right? Because I thought I needed to be this thing to people. I thought I needed to be in a three-piece suit and a bow tie and perfectly groomed and all that. But what I found is people weren't receiving me as well because it's like, that's not my natural state. Like, now my suits are nice. Like, don't trip. My suit game is serious business, but it's not always necessary. Huh?
And the watch game.
Yeah, well, yeah, my timepiece game is serious business. But I didn't have to, I wasn't being always true to me. Now, I can wear a suit if I want to. Like today, I happen to choose not to wear a suit. This is what I happen to put on for our conversation. Right. And I would also wear this thing if we were doing this on a panel discussion at pick a university in the world. Doesn't matter. And that's not because of an arrogance thing. It's like, if this is what I want to be on that particular day, that's what I'm going to do. Right. My clothes don't have anything to do with what's inside of my brain and how we transmit that. Right. They don't. Now it matters how people perceive you. So there's a time and place for how you engage. But before, I thought it was a necessity for me to dress a certain way, to talk a certain way, to start off giving a lecture or a podcast with some type of quote to show people I was smart.
But I do want to ask, like, okay, does race play into how you dress, or people's perceptions of you and how you choose
100%.
to dress? Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%, no doubt about it. right? So as a young Black man, I have to think through that, and that's an entirely different conversation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, we don't have time to go down that rabbit hole today, but we can certainly talk about that in the future of what that looks like, right? So I would come in and out. So yes, race plays a role, but let's table that one for another supporting leadership conversation because I think that's a bigger deal,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't want to gloss over that because that is extremely important. And for people who listen to your show, I don't want there to be any misinterpretation of that thought process and what that impact looks like, how it affects us, how we affect other people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that very singularly in a future show,
Yeah.
if you'll have me,
Let's, no, of
right?
course, let's do it.
Yeah. So, yeah, to thine own self be true, right? Like, as if you can be comfortable with yourself, the world will accept you as that. Particularly once they get past the oh, he or she's not an idiot part, then it's fine. Number two is again, I'll go back to Renaissance humanists, right? Socrates and Aristotle's of the world. They talk about four cardinal virtues, right? Courage, prudence, temperance, justice, right? And I mentioned integrity, honesty, decency, virtue earlier. But those four virtues, courage, prudence, temperance, justice, are extremely important to me. And courage to me, and I agree with Dr. Maya Angelou again as to reference her, when she says courage is the greatest of all the virtues. I think that's true because if you have courage, you can have prudence, temperance, justice, integrity, honesty, decency. You can have all of those things. But if you don't have courage, everything else falls by the wayside. The reason we can climb these mountains without a rope is because you have the courage and knowing that if you do fall, you're not. God is going to keep you safe, right? If you do make a mistake, you can bounce back. If you aren't thinking clearly on a particular day, you don't have to make the decision on that day. Do it later. If you decide to stand alone, you have the courage to do that and speak your truth to whomever needs to hear that at that particular moment in time. So yeah, number one, to thine own self be true. Number two, have the cardinal virtues, right, that we talked about. Number three, and this is very, very, very important as well. Have fun, right?
Yeah.
Because so many people take themselves too seriously. They go through life like, oh, like, well, I have to do this, and I played Hamlet at Oxford and Cambridge and all this. They try to be all smart and all this craziness. No one cares, right? When all of us die, right, it's going to be very few people at our funeral, even if very few is a few thousand, right?
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant passed away, one of my favorite humans in the world, right? Let's just say 20,000 people filled the Staples Center. It's 300 million people in the United States alone, 7 billion in the world, right? And now if Kobe only gets 20,000, what am I going to get? So you might as well have fun and do what you want to do, because ultimately once you expire, no one cares, right? You may offer value while you're here, you may be valuable while you're here, but you certainly need to have fun on the journey to say, I did my best. I put in the best effort. I put in effort to be a decent human being, and I had fun, right? And fun doesn't always mean you're super smiley all the time and high-fiving people, but it's fun in the sense of you're doing what you want to do on any given time and any given day, right? So those would be the three pieces of counsel, experiential-based learning that I would offer to people. To thine own self be true, courage, prudence, temperance, justice, integrity, honesty, decency, those virtues, and then have fun, right? I think if you can do those things, you'll be all right. That's not to say life will be, all super fun and super exciting all the time and you won't have any life challenges. But if you can manage to do those things, right? Not necessarily in order, but collectively, if you can do those things collectively, ultimately I think you'll be all right. Right. And that's how I live my journey, right? So I don't know how other people do it, but it's doing decently fine for me at this point. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Wow.
Again,
I
as
mean,
long as
like,
I don't quit, we'll be okay.
what a fantastic way to end with those three not pieces of advice, but words of wisdom from your
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
It's always such a pleasure to talk to you, CT, and I just feel fortunate that our paths had crossed so that we've been able to maintain this friendship, because I just learned so much from you, and I hope people listening were inspired by that too. But absolutely, I'm going to take you up on your offer to come back to that, because I just, you know, it's not your job to educate every white person on the planet. You know, I think we've got to take some of that on
Right.
ourselves. But I also
Right.
really appreciate engaging in dialogue with you about race, because your experiences and perspective are obviously so different from mine as a white woman. And it really does help shape how I know I need to lead and how I need to think about just some things that are outside my own personal experiences. So I'll be knocking on your door again to come back around to that.
Yeah, no doubt, because it's not about being right or wrong in those conversations. It's about having the appropriate level of perspective and understanding, right? And I think if people do those things, the world will be a much better place. Too many people want to be right and wrong instead of understanding, right? And it drives me bonkers, right? So I'm almost borderline on this mission to civilize, right? But I don't know if I want to take that battle on singularly.
Yeah.
But one step at a time. So yeah, we can definitely talk about that. And I most certainly appreciate you having me on the show. I hope hope it was of value to whomever decides to listen to it, and let's do it again.
Let's do that. Thanks, CT.